What's good, guys? What's good, real closers? Good morning. How's it going, Gustavo?
Going good, ready to start the week. For those of us that are starting the week, maybe you never stopped, right? Thought about that. Well, keep going, keep going. But start of the week for all the civilians out there, first day of the week, ready to go, man.
I know. We were just talking about that, right? In real estate, it's like there's really no Monday. It's more like just another day because
Another
most of us
day.
work through the weekend.
Exactly.
And today we have a really nice, nice topic. We've talked a lot about calling expires, FSBOs. A lot of listings can come from that. We know we brought a couple people over last week, a couple weeks ago, that are killing it calling, FSBOs. And the question comes up all the time: what dialer should I use? Right? What's the best? Single dialer, multi-line dialer,
Which one?
this, that, right? So we're going to talk about that today. So Gustavo, what do you, based on your experience with all the clients that you have right now, what seems to be working for everybody?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. It's a very common question, right? It's about the setup, right? People sometimes they get convinced. Great, I want to make calls to expires. I want to make calls to for sale by owner. I want to, follow up with my leads better. What is the right system tool for dialing, right? I get that question very often. Maybe they have an ISA. What's the best dialer for my ISA? It's really the same answer, but different persona. What scenario what dialer is best for each scenario? And that's kind of where my answer is going towards, right? It depends. It depends what kind of call you're making, okay? Because this is like one of the most important things about using a dialer. The goal, and this might sound tricky, but follow me humor me with this sentence, right? The goal of the dialer is not to make as many dials as possible. People get confused with that, okay? One of these tools, I was looking at Call Tools, which is an excellent dialer. It can give you 10 lines per person, 10 lines per person, right? So you fire it up, it dials 10 numbers at once, and then connects you to the one whoever picks up the fastest, right? So that's one way to do it. But the goal of a dialer isn't necessarily to dial as many lines as possible, right? Otherwise, my suggestion would be like a massive dialer, like a Call Tools, like a Vici dial, like one of those massive dialers. But that's actually not the answer, right? The goal isn't necessarily to dial as many numbers as possible. It is to have as many conversations as possible, okay? As many conversations as possible, okay? So for that goal, it's actually a little bit more interesting, right? It's a better question. Which dialer is going to get me in touch with more people, okay? That's the better question to ask. And I'm going to give you some examples. Now, when you're talking about outbound, when you're talking about inbound leads, like Facebook leads and everything, single line dialer is all you need, right? That's all you need. Whatever your CRM offers, use that. Right? What you don't want to do typically is call all of these internet leads on your cell phone, right? Your cell phone probably shouldn't be used for that because your number can be tagged as spam. Yes, they are inbound leads. Yes, they requested you to call them, but I'm not going to, your guess is as good as mine. Your number will get tagged as spam, eventually will, if you're just using that to call those leads. So I recommend using the built-in dialer off your CRM. You can get a line from a Google Voice or a Ring Central. Those are great dialers, single line, because inbound Facebook leads really only requires single line, okay? Because you're not calling 10,000 at once. If you're going to do like a big like a rekindling campaign to dial 10,000, 20,000 older internet leads, okay? That's where I would use something like Call Tools, because that's a steamroller of a dialer. It's a big dialing system. But I would only use that if and only if you're going to be calling a massive amount of leads in that scenario, okay? That's one, the inbound lead scenario. It's very simple. It's a very simple one, right? If that's what it was all about, it'd be easy. The more interesting one is the outbound, cold calling. The cold calling scenario is much more interesting for this, okay? What is the best dialer? And even here, I'm going to break it down into categories. I'll go with the three most popular ones: for sale by owner, expired, and circle prospect, okay? For sale by owner, expired, circle prospecting, but they cover a lot more than that. Let's just start with those three. For sale by owner, the interesting thing about for sale by owner, right? Although they can be kind of an obstinate seller, a little bit of a combative seller to real estate agents, what's interesting about them is that they want to be found. They want to be called, okay? So the only issue a lot of agents have with for sale by owners is they wish there were more of them, right? Because they're relatively easy to get in touch with, relatively easy, okay? You can call them, you can text them, and they'll usually give you a response. See, do you have a buyer? Are you a buyer yourself? Do you have an offer for them, right? They'll get back to you, right? Whether they say what you want or not is a different story. But you don't typically need automation to call for sale by owner. That's another single line dialer scenario, okay? You can pick up, like, for example, if you're buying the list from RedX, right, was actually a partner of Real Closer's Facebook group, and get a discount with that. We got this discount code. We should drop the link in the comments below. You can use the Vortex dialer, single line, Vortex dialer, and you're good to go, right? And that sets you back like $100 or whatever it is, right? $100 a month or whatever it is. So you go in there and set that up right away, because you're only going to be probably going to be dialing just one at a time. Okay. No one calls old old FISBOs from 6 months ago. That's not really a thing, right? Let me call all these old FISBOs. Not really. Okay. Not really. Why? Because 90-some% of FISBOs list, I think, what is it, Roberto? Within 3 months, within 6 months, 98% of them list, right? So
like
it's
90
not.
days,
Yeah, like 90 days, right? So the overwhelming majority are either going to be sold or they're going to list with an agent probably within the first 90 days. So there's not a calling old FISBOs isn't really a thing. Now, the other category, a lot more interesting, expired listings, withdrawals, canceled listings. I'll group them all together, right? Why? Because that's a more challenging call to make for a couple of reasons. Number one, they don't necessarily want to be found, okay? They don't necessarily want you calling them at all, or anyone calling them at all. They're not putting their number out there. Please give me a call, bring me a buyer. That's not what that might be what they're feeling. They want a buyer, like a real qualified buyer for their home, but they're not advertising their number, their personal cell phone, their home number. They're not. So you need to get the data. You've got to buy the data to match numbers to that address. That's what you can get. Do not make the mistake that I made when I was a newbie of getting the number off of the MLS. Can't do that, folks. Don't do that. Don't do that, because you're going to get fined. Because I know this, because I paid a fine for doing that, okay? So get the data from a third party. RedX, another great example of getting data for expired listings and older expired listings, okay? Because 90% of them are not going to list within 90 days. Expired listings tend to last longer. Withdrawn, canceled listings tend to last longer, and they've already decided to work with an agent, right? So you want to hit them right away. But even a long tail of conversion makes a lot more sense calling old expireds than it does calling older FISBOs. So you can get more people in there. That's a scenario where you can start talking about multi-line dialers, okay? Multi-line dialers start to make sense with expired listings, because you can have, because the way the data works, you can match, depending on what provider you use, like RedX or even like a Vulcan 7, you can get 8 or 9 numbers matched to some of these expired listings, right? Depending on the data source and whether you pay for the premium data or the regular data, you can get 8 or 9 numbers or 2 or 3 minimum matched to each record. So you might only have a list of 40, 50 expireds, but you might have a couple hundred numbers to dial, okay? Very different kind of situation. But even with that kind of a multi-line scenario, I'm not talking about 10 lines. Maybe I'm talking about 2 at a time, maybe, okay? You want to add some speed, but going too fast, dialing too fast is a mistake, right? And I've seen this with my own team. I have a cold calling team with Empower ISA. I see this mistake happen all the time. We're not getting many contacts. We speed up the dialer, right? It might just be a bad list, a bad patch. And then we get to a better patch. And I've seen abandoned call rates. Abandoned call is someone, when you're dialing 2, 3, 4 lines at once, and they all pick up, you can only answer one line. That's it. You're going to drop the other calls, okay? I've seen dropped call rates, 30%, 40% drop calls, 50% drop calls. That is, you can't do that, right? You're wasting a lot of these numbers. It's not compliant either. You want to do it the right way. So if you're dropping half the calls you're making, you're dialing too fast. You're dialing too fast. Got to scale it back. A lot of times we might think that 3 lines is the best. I found in my experience, 1 to 2 lines usually gets the job done, right? The goal is not amount of dials. The goal is contacts, okay? So you might have to scale it back. 1 to 2 lines is really good for most people, actually. 1 to 2 lines, and you want to adjust it to make sure you're not dropping a bunch of calls. Want to make sure, and all the dialers give you this information. How many dropped calls, abandoned calls you had. for the day, for the week, for the month, right? So make sure you're not wasting numbers. You don't want to be wasting numbers by dialing them too fast. You don't want to do that, okay? So that's the older expired kind of scenario. The multi-line dialer kind of starts to rear its head at that point, right? Then we're going to go to the other end of the spectrum, right? The cold calling for excellence, which is circle prospecting, true cold call, calling the phone book essentially, right? And that is where the automation can really make a difference. Absolutely can. Although I will say, Roberto, I know a lot of agents that do single line circle prospecting, right? Like, how do you do that? They have really good lists, right? And they have a high connection rate. And the agents only do it for like an hour or two a day, but they're really good at it, right? So they know they're going to talk to 5, 10, 15 people, and they're going to get a lead out of it. Period. End of story. If that's working for you, fine. For the rest of us, we might have to use the automation 2-line up to 3-line to get a decent contact rate. What is a decent contact rate? 5 to 10% is average. This is like half of what it was only a few years ago, because the automation is getting better, because the anti-spam technology is getting better. It is a definition of a spam call is an outbound prospecting cold call. It still works. It's just harder to work now than it was a few years ago, okay? That's where the tools can really come in handy. Tools like call tools, like some of these multi-line dialers that can try and get you out of the spam bucket. It controls the amount of dials you make every day, because if you dial too much, dial too fast, dial too many numbers, you're going to get tagged as spam faster. Okay. You're going to get tagged as spam faster, which means when you call someone, you get these calls all the time. I'm sure you do. It's going to say, oh, spam caller, potential spam, telemarketing call, right? Potential fraud, robocall. Those drive me nuts, right? When some of our callers are tagged as robocalls. Not true, but hey, that's how it works. That's what it looks like to them when you're dialing way too fast. So be aware of that, okay? Be aware of what the right thing is for you to do to avoid getting thrown into spam jail, okay? When you're making those dials. But understand what list you're calling and which one actually needs a multi-line dialer, which of those actually need it, right? So make sure you're aware of that, because understanding how to dial, what to dial, is half the battle, right? You got to do it the right way. You have no idea, Roberto, how many people assume that for everything, even Facebook leads, you need a 3-line dialer. I go, hold on, right? Let's just take a step back. Why would you think that, right? Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the numbers. And if you have a list that is so poor quality, you need 3, 4, 5 lines at once to dial it, get better data. That would be a recommendation. Get better data, right? Because, if you need to, I had one of our clients, they have their dialing setting at 10 dials. 10 lines. 10 lines. And once we actually walked through it and talked through it, they realized that was just an impressive number, but the results weren't there, okay? They thought they had to go faster because they weren't talking to hardly anybody. They didn't realize they were dropping the majority of their calls, dropping them, okay? So faster is not necessarily better. The goal of the dialer is not to make as many dials as humanly possible. It is to talk to as many people as possible and get the most out of these calling lists, okay? So Roberto, that's pretty much what I want to tell folks. If you have any additional questions, more specific questions, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to add more on as people discuss and give us more specific questions. But that's my overview. That's my spectrum of the single line solitary call to the multi-line power dialing scenario.
Yeah, so guys, what's working for you? What's not working for you? Which dialers is working best for you? And what are you doing, right? As any of this stuff that we talked about today is going to help your business, drop a hashtag value. Let us know that this is helping. Tell us, what else, you want us to talk about. And again, a quick plug for one of our partners in Real Closers. If you guys want, we have a discount code to try out Redx, and Redx works as a single line dialer, also multi-line dialer. However you want to use it. But yeah, whatever you use, I guess you have to put in the work, right? You have to pick up the phone, you have to make those calls. And that's kind of the most important take out of today's Power Hour. So Gustavo, thanks a lot for stopping by. We're going to come back again next Monday. Anything you guys want us to cover, drop it in the comments and we'll come back.
Right.
Sounds good, Gustavo. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.